Well, good afternoon, and thank you all for being here. I know we've got more people coming in, but we've got quite a bit who are here right now. We'd like to get started, and thank you for being on time. We are thrilled to have so many of you here today. We're grateful for all you do in the community, and we commend you for all of your hard work. Tonight, we'll be discussing, going to slide 2. Tonight, we'll be discussing who we are at Impact, the grant eligibility, the evaluation process, application process, and some applications best practices. Next slide. The Impact 100 model is designed to empower women to see themselves as philanthropists by having at least 100 women come together and donate $1,000 each. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. We can make a high impact grant of $100,000 to a local nonprofit. Next slide, please. Can you all mute yourselves while we go through this? Thank you. Our mission at Impact 100 is to improve the lives of the greater DC, Washington area by collectively funding high impact grants to local nonprofits. Our vision is to address unmet needs in the community, prioritizing those that result from systemic racism and structural inequity, to create and sustain a diverse community of dynamic women committed to building bridges across the wide demographic divides of Washington, D.C., and to empower women as philanthropists and leaders. Next slide. We accept application from 5 broad areas. Just to look at those, we'll briefly describe those. What we call is focus area committees, and education is one of our committees. And what we're looking for there is for applications that are looking to improve learning opportunities for students who lack access to quality education, early childhood programs and literacy programs, and also to improve high school graduation rates. In the Arts and Culture Focus Area Committee, we are focusing on the greater exposure for participation in the arts to expand arts education and the use of arts as medium for expression. So we're looking also for applications that come in from underserved communities who've lacked the access to participate in art. In our Family Focus Area Committee, we're looking at programs uh, that will support the lives of individuals and children and families and seniors. And especially, but not limited to immigrant communities, excuse me, and people of color who have been subject to systemic racism. So who may be focusing on housing, living waging, job skills, training, and others. In the Environment Preservation and Recreation Committee, we're looking at opportunities to help the natural by preserving or improving natural environments, environmental justice, climate change, recreational spaces, and the like. And then our last focus area committee is health and wellness. And this will include organizations that are out there helping to access better health care, improve physical and mental health, and those who may have experienced discrimination, including people of color, disabled, incarcerated individuals, or those who foster healthy living habits and holistic wellness. Next slide, please. So more about our Impact 100. Our volunteers are a diverse group of women who come together to learn about and support our communities. They are volunteers. They're not necessarily area experts, but they're dedicated to learning about your work in the community and to review your applications, keeping in mind our mission and funding requirements. You get to tell the full story of your application. Next slide. Just to tell you a little bit about our grants team, we have the grants co-chair, which includes myself, I'm Dorothy Durden, and Kate Rogers. And then we have two board members who are responsible for outreach to the nonprofit community. Lois Thembrat, she's a nonprofit liaison, and Helleran Shapiro, who's our grantee liaison. And then the 5 committees that I just spoke to you about, each one of those committees will have a co-chair, and they will work with our volunteers and review all the applications as they come in. Next slide. Kate.
Okay, hello everyone. And again, I want to add to Dorothy, thank you, thank you, thank you for joining us. We are so excited to kick off our 2026 grant cycle. And my name is Kate Rogers, and together with Dorothy Durden, who you just met, we will co-chair the grants process. One thing I would just ask again would be remind everyone as you continue to join, we have a large group today, so if you don't mind putting yourself on mute. And also, we do have time built in at the end for questions. So as questions come up, you may find that your question is answered as we go along. If not, please put it into the chat, and we will be sure that all of the questions in the chat are responded to before we wrap up today. So as we transition, I have the opportunity to describe to you the eligibility requirements of applying for an Impact 100 DC grant. Next slide, please. Starting with what would be the organizational eligibility for your group. And again, as we go through all of this, please note that in terms of the eligibility requirements, they are firm. So you just want to go through and be sure that you do meet each of the criteria. First and foremost, that your organization is a 501c3 tax exempt organization. We have a parameter for applying for our grants that you would have an annual operating budget of no less than $300,000 and no more than $5 million. A partnership option where small organizations can partner with more established organizations to meet the budget threshold are permitted. It is required when you submit your application that you do include 3 years or 36 months of financial reports and tax records. It's also required that your organization would serve the greater Washington, D.C. DMV area. And for our purposes, that would include the District of Columbia, Montgomery County, Prince George's County, Fairfax, Arlington, or the cities of Alexandria, Falls Church, and Fairfax. You do not have to serve all of those areas, but the work that you do must take place within at least one of those areas. In terms of your proposal eligibility, as Dorothy described, we do have 5 areas of focus. So when you think about your funding request, it is important that it meets at least one areas of those 5 focus areas. You might find as you put it together that you think, you know what, our organization might meet a need, within multiple areas, and that's fine. And we'll speak to that as we continue to go through this training today, but it must at least relate to one. Your proposal must align with our goal of addressing an unmet need that are byproducts of racism or other structural inequities that are affecting marginalized populations within our community. For example, but certainly not limited to LGBTQIA+, immigrant communities, people experiencing homelessness, people with disabilities, veterans, and many, many, many other areas. Your funding request, should it be awarded with a grant, must expend the funds within 12 to 24 months, and you must include a total funding request for at least $100,000. Next, the criteria for proposal readiness. And again, what we really would like to stress with our applicants is that the applications are read by many members of Impact 100, and the best application is really going to be a very complete application. So knowing that these are going to be read by a variety of people, you want to really be, take a special, kind of care with, how clear are the goals within the application or the funding request within it. So the unmet needs should be clear, established, and well documented. You want to demonstrate to us that you have a track record of successfully working within the target population. Your plan work is designed to actively pursue change and will have what would be considered a significant impact on the target population. For a formal partnership, a detailed MOA must be in place, and the budget needs to be reasonable and supported given the numbers that you plan to serve. And what we would say on this again is that the more clearly this is articulated, knowing that several readers will see your application, so that again, these items are very clear to to those that will be reading and evaluating your proposal, the better. Next slide, please. Just to identify what we do not fund. What we do not fund as you prepare to submit your application. We do not fund debt reduction, operating deficits, interim or bridge funding, or endowment funding. We do not fund individuals or private foundations, activities that are religious or political in nature. And one caveat that we would say is that we do know that for some organizations, that your organization may be housed within a religious structure, and that is fine as long as the nature of the work, the scope of work, is not religious or political in nature and would be accessible by all without limitations. And finally, we do not fund fund drives, annual appeals, fundraising events, or general capital campaigns. And then finally, what we really do stress, because we do know and we're very mindful of the time and the effort and the resources that it takes to complete and submit an application for Impact 100 to consider for our grants. We always say, eligible does not always translate to ready. So in terms of considering your organizational readiness for what we would be reading for and looking for with our grant awards, you want to be, confident that you have a track record of success or learning from your past failures in the area of your proposal. We are looking to see that your board and your executives are involved and invested in the proposal's success. The staff that will be involved with carrying it out has the experience to succeed. That what we oftentimes will look for and are very, are very careful to see, that is present is that after the Impact 100 grant, has finalized, does your organization have the ability to carry on the work after our funds are expended? And your finance organization is well positioned to manage a grant of this size and is capable of complying with the compliance reporting requirements of the grant.
Okay, next slide, please. I know Kate just went over a lot of this, but just to reiterate it, because it is so important. This is how we evaluate your application. We're looking to see if your request does address the critical unmet needs in the identified community. Have you clearly defined, the actions that it will take to meet the needs of your community? Will it address systemic inequities? And will it include those community leaderships and program developers? And so can you sustain, with the funds that we give you, will this be sustained over a period of time? So it's just a really, really, sorry, that word is I'm having a hard time with that word. But anyway, we're just saying it again to make sure you understand what the grant, when people are reviewing the grant, what they're looking for. Next slide, please. So the grant review process, this is information we just want to let you know that we have the 5 focus area committees that we talked about earlier. And we do, when you submit your application, we ask you to choose not just one of the committees that you'd like to review your application, but choose a second one, because we can't guarantee that that first one you chose will be the one that will review your application. So the focus area committee first in round one, they review and score the applications, and they're looking for information to tell us who you are, what you're doing, what you hope to achieve, and why we should fund this and why now. Round two, each one of those focus area committees will be going through and evaluating the applications and saying, what are the top three applications here that meet our criteria? They'll go a deep dive into that review. And then the third round, they'll make a site visit to those three organizations. And based on the site visits, they'll probably ask more questions, learn more about your organization, and then finally, when they get back from the site visits, they'll decide which one of these for each of the five focus area committees should we put forward to our full membership of Impact 100. And those top three applications from each committee, one from each committee, will be evaluated on by the full Impact 100 membership. And that person who is identified as the top applicant will receive that $100,000 grant. Next slide, please. We just want you to know that we do have a fair and transparent review process. Each one of our reviewers must complete a conflict of interest questionnaire to make sure that they don't have any sort of conflict of interest, so that they may not be a participant of the organization that, they're voting for or that they're evaluating. Making sure that there's no conflict of interest, financial interest, that they have some exercise over the substantial amount of funds within that organization. And they also must disclose if they have a relationship that might interfere with them, with their ability to be impartial or unbiased. So, and finally, all members on these committees must agree that the information they received is confidential. Next slide, please.
I don't know, I think my kids would like.
Okay, so we're gonna talk.
That's true. Well, we could probably.
Hi, can somebody
Someone's not
please
muted.
mute themselves? Thank you. So briefly to talk about the Finance Committee review process, which is sort of what we call round two. As Dorothy mentioned, those that go on to the second round, applications will be reviewed by the Finance Committee. And the role of the Finance Committee is really just to get a sense of the trends and current financial health of the applicants. So as we're going through and evaluating the financial statement reports, which we'll talk a little bit about in a few slides, more specifics on what those reports are, and the 990s, we will be reviewing to look over the course of a 3-year period to try to understand if there's any trends or areas that might indicate areas of risk or liquidity. We're not doing a full-blown audit. We are not doing a full-blown financial review. It's more of a process of trying to understand, are there any current trends that might be indicative of concerns that we might have to award a $100,000 grant. In most cases, if there are questions that we have, we will then reach out to the organizations for clarification and potentially to have a discussion around any things that we've identified that might require a little bit further consideration. And then the recommendations from the Finance Committee will then be provided to the focus area committee chairs for part of their final deliberation in evaluating the semifinalists to identify which applicants are going to be identified to move forward.
Okay, so what we would like to do is to provide a little bit of information for you about the application itself. And if you would like to take a look, our application will go live today. If you would like to take a look at an offline copy of the application, it's currently available on our website, and you'll see on the slide where you can find that and where you can find that on our website. There's all sorts of information on the website, and in addition to the application, there's a very extensive FAQ on there. But if you want to take a look at the different sections, if you are new to applying for a grant with Impact 100, we did update our application here so that we would ask that you take a look at that and you can see the different sections and see how appropriate they apply to your organization. However, that is an offline copy that you'll see on the website. If we could just ask everyone to please mute. In terms of the live application, we use a grant platform called Good Grants, and you will find that again. You'll be asked to register and create a login for that. And you'll find that on the Good Grants platform, and that is where you will find the actual application itself to complete and then submit. As I said, we have a pretty extensive FAQ also available on the website. So these slides that we are speaking to today will be available at the conclusion of today's training. And everyone will receive a copy of that. But if you have additional questions, at the start of the application process, many of them will be answered in that FAQ, and you'll find that on the website. One thing that we really do want to, Katie, if you don't mind going back to slide 19, one thing that we really do want to stress is that this is a very competitive grant that we have found in the years that we have been organized and that we have been funding these grants, that the number of organizations that have been applying for them has been increasing. So it is very competitive. And the application reflects the due diligence. And as Dorothy said, that we look at them very carefully. We have many members take a look at them. So it is very competitive. It reflects the due diligence that we take. We take the opportunity to put our support behind the very worthy endeavors that are going on here in the nonprofit space here in the DMV very seriously and applaud that. So we are very careful. But with that in mind, we would say that the application is competitive. So the greater the clarity, the concise nature of the information, the ability to easily read the application are things that we would really encourage you to give some thought to. And then finally, when you take a look at the application, either offline or when you register to participate through Good Grants, you will see that there are 7 sections to the application for the 2026 grant cycle. That is a change for us. In the past, we had 8. This year, we will have 7 sections to complete. Next slide, please. Regarding the funding request, this section allows the organization to fully explain the funding request. And we are looking for and encourage you to make a very strong and effective case for funding by clearly identifying the need and what your planned work. And for example, in terms of the key focus, we would say identify your key resources, and we would say be very specific. For instance, what we are looking to fund are tutors, for example. We encourage you to really define the activities in a way that is clear to see how would the plan be executed, that if you did have our resources, what would you do with them? For instance, specifically, our tutors will work one-on-one with children 2 hours a day, 3 times a week for a year, for example. We ask that you very specifically identify your objectives. What are your deliverables? For example, are they training programs? Are they workshops? Who will you be working with? When will you work with them? And then finally, and very importantly, to please define your success. If we were to fund your request, what change will result for the target audience or community as a result of your services? And again, data is helpful, stories are helpful, very specific, clear, concise information so that we as the reader of the application can really see this unfolding in the community.
Okay, so one new item that you'll see this year compared to prior applications is that we're no longer requiring you to submit a full budget and budget narrative. This year, we are going to ask that you simply identify the top 5 areas, if applicable, to your funding request, and then identify based on percentage of total of the $100,000 grant. So we've seen over the years that a large number of items on the budgets are very similar and can be boiled down to a handful of expense categories. So hopefully this will be simpler for the organizations to complete and pull together, and will give us a good snapshot as to how those funds are expected to be allocated across the $100,000 grant. So it is a table within the application that you can fill out. And we've included some example expense descriptions based on some of the most common items that we've seen in the budgets that have been provided over the years. And so it will be a free text section. So you will just key in your expense description and percentage of grant. Unfortunately, it's not a drop down or anything like that, but you can select what we've provided as examples, or you can add your own. Next slide. So we do tend to get a lot of questions, and some of our biggest challenges just around getting the right information from a financial information perspective. So what we're asking for in the financial oversight section is to just provide some more clarity on what are the key controls and functions around how financial information is gathered, who is responsible in that process, um, what oversight and governance key roles are involved, and how is that information pulled together if there's been any recent changes. So we do provide a free text box to simply describe your accounting function, oversight, high level description of internal controls, really just to get a sense of what types of activities are happening and the level of, I would say, oversight that's involved in preparation of the financial information period to period, and certainly over the actual preparation of the financial information on an annual basis. Next slide. So what do we need to see in order for the Finance Committee to do their financial review? So we do require that an organization has been effectively operating for at least 3 years at a level to have prepared either independently audited or independently reviewed financial statements. So that would be financial information that has been reviewed by third-party qualified accountants who can provide a report on either an independent review report or an independent audit report on the financial statements under the period that's covered. So what are we looking for in each financial statement package? That would include your basic financial statement. So statement of financial position or balance sheet, statement of activities or income statement, statement of functional expenses, and statement of cash flows. And we would typically expect that to then include that independent audit review report along with accompanying footnotes to the financial statements. Some of the common errors that we see is that we get draft statements that don't include that wet signature from the auditor or the independent reviewer, validating that it is effectively a final version and includes the most complete perspective of the reviewer in terms of the application of GAAP for that current year and the financial statements that are supported by that opinion or review perspective. From a tax reporting perspective, we ask for 990s to be included, and the 990s are generally expected to have been timely and filed in compliance with general compliance reporting timelines, so would expect to be also signed by the tax accountant who prepared the 990 for you. And then lastly, we asked for budget to actuals. So in previous years, we've tried to get a better understanding of a company's current budgeting process. How are you thinking about your budget and forecasting, and how well are you actually kind of playing out in terms of actuals? We have moved up this year the application timeline to apply and to submit. And so we acknowledge that very few organizations will have the opportunity to have audited financials for their fiscal 2025. Maybe if you're a June 30 year end, you might have time to get it audited before our December deadline, but most organizations we recognize will not. And so we will have a bigger gap this year than we've potentially had in prior years, as we expect many organizations will then give us their 2024, 2023, and 2022 financial statements to make up the 3 years. And so this year we are asking for your most recent annual full year budget to actual. So if that's 2024, January to December 2024. And then we would also like to see the gap year all the way up to whatever budget to actuals are available based on your company's policy, leading up to the application submission date. So if you give us financial statements from January 1 to December 31st, 2024, then we would like to see a budget to actual that covers basically January 1, 2025, all the way up through whenever you would have your last budget. So if you prepare budgets quarterly, then your June 30 or your September 30 budget to actual would be sufficient. If you provide them monthly, then maybe you'll have October, November available based on when you actually submit within our application submission window. So if you have questions along the way as to your budget to actual, does that meet the requirement, you can certainly reach out to us. I know this is a bit of a change from prior years, but what we're really just trying to understand is, because we're expecting to have more stale financial data, can we get more up-to-date budget to actual reporting information? And we recognize that that will be internal reports. So if whatever system that you use to develop your budget to actuals, that's what we will use. That is not something that's required to be subject to an independent review or a third party to certify or to compile or do anything like that. So that is the financial package. We can go on to the next slide. Yes. And so what are we looking for? Again, completeness of the requested documents in the application. There is very clear spots for you to attach each of the required year's documents. You can combine the annual report for each period. So that will be its own field to complete. And then we'll ask for each of the budgets to actual so that you can see that each are a required attachment for those fields. So hopefully that should minimize questions on what's needed, but certainly you can reach out there if you have questions on whether or not your independent auditor or review will qualify. We are expecting that it would be from a certified CPA firm or somebody who's licensed to be able to provide that independent audit or review report. And then what we are then looking at is just, again, assessing revenue and trying to get a sense of, recurring nature of your activities, ongoing liquidity, and any recent changes in cash flows or indebtedness that would, signify some type of a risk factor that we might need to reach out and ask further questions. Next slide. I think I'm kicking over to Dorothy.
Okay, thank you, Latina. Just again, going over some of what we've already talked about, some of what Latina spoke about, and some of what Kate already spoke about. Our online platform is Good Grants. It will be live today after this meeting. So you'll be able to go on using this link here and get your sign up to start your application. You can start and save anytime, you can go back and return and look at it, but it won't get to us until you press submit. Keep in mind that any files that you uploaded are, the size can't be more than 5 MB in size. So we won't see that application until you hit submit again. We are also not able to advise you on any focus area committee that you think, that's not a question we can answer for you, but you can say 1, 2, 3. These are the top 3 committees that I'd like to be considered for. And we are also not able to provide you any feedback during the application process. So there may be during some time when we come out for site visits or something of the like, or we go through the round 1 on the financials, there might be a time where we reach out to you to see something that may have been missed before we go through the evaluation process. Okay. And finally, applications are only reviewed when they are completed. So please make sure they are completed and don't wait till the last minute. Next slide. So here are again some thoughts. Don't wait till the last minute. Anything can happen with technology. Fully address all of the questions that are included and requested in the applications, the attachments. Missing information can create an issue. Clearly let us know, what do you need? What is your plan worked? What is the heart of your application? Tell us that. Don't assume that, we're going to figure it out. Make sure you make it very clear. Include key data and the support needed, statement of facts and credibility. And proposals need to articulate specific activities that the funding will cover. And also finally define the outcomes. We need to understand how you will measure the impact and the change that you'll be able to do in your community if you are awarded this $100,000. Next slide, please. Make sure that your budget and summary proposal this is Latina, excuse me. Latina, you want to take this slide on best practices?
Sure.
29.
Fantastic. So again, this is just making sure that you've got all of the requirements. So we have 2 sections that um, require specific attachments. So making sure that you've aligned that budget request with your overall summary, making sure that your budget is equal to or exceeds $100,000. Since you are going to be, using the table in there that you've articulated as best as possible up to, the top 5 areas that you are going to be using funds for. If there's a bunch of like little areas that are, less than, significant points, then you can consolidate. There is an other category that you can use, but make sure that you're trying to cover 100% of the $100,000 as best as possible. And if there's areas that, there's only maybe 3 points that you're hitting on, then you can make not applicable for the other 2. Our system only allows attachments up to 5 MB. So one of the common errors that we get is people are trying to upload attachments that are larger than 5 MB. And so it may not allow you to save your application. It'll show an error. You may just need to clear that out and then perhaps either compress your file size to be smaller than 5 MB, or reattach another type of format. So certain documents may make more sense to use a certain type of format. So certainly if you're attaching your financial statement information, we'd expect that that's largely in a PDF format. But you may need to attach other types of files that would be like maybe an Excel or a PowerPoint would be acceptable. So just think about whether or not and the file type that you are using aligns with the type of file that's being requested. And then certainly if you have any questions or there's any areas that are unclear as you're completing the application, you can feel free to reach out to grants@impact100dc.org, and we will do our best to respond to you as quickly as possible. So I think that goes back to Kate.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So the very important question of the key dates. And again, this is all posted to our website as well, but just for your own planning purposes, at the conclusion of our training today, we will open our application portal. The application will be live, it's complete, and you can begin to work on it now and submit it at any time between now and when you are ready. We are more than happy and welcome receiving them, as early and often in our process. But the application will close on December 15th, and that is a hard stop. So please know that as of after December 15th, the application will be closed. One sort of cautionary word is frequently we will have organizations that might start the application early in the process with the intention to go back to finish it. We won't circle back to let you know that you have an open application. So if you intend to complete it and be considered for our grant cycle this year, please just be sure that you have submitted it and that you've hit submit on the application within Good Grants before the close of December 15th, 2025. From there, then, we at Impact 100, really, kind of set to work at that point and begin, a multi-step review process that is done, within committee. And, we go through the reading of the applications and discussion and review within our membership. What will happen is the applications will go through committee with recommendations for semifinalists. They will undergo another financial review. So you may find that you might receive some questions from us during that time frame. And then any of the organization that will move forward as a semifinalist in our process will be contacted to schedule a site visit. So your site visit could take place anytime between April 20th and May 6th. So we would just say at this, if you want to just sort of put onto your calendar that would be a site visit period. Obviously, it will only take place on one of those dates for you. And we work together with the organizations who we will conduct site visits to find, a convenient time for both yourself as the organization and our committee members to come and visit during that window. But that will be the window of site visits. You'll receive notification for that ahead of time to let you know that you are moving into that round, so that you can begin to prepare for that. We will announce who our finalists are. Our 5 finalists, will be announced on June 10th, and we do a Meet the Finalist event. So again, for your planning purposes, we, create executive summaries of the recommendation of the recommended finalists. We work with the organizations to provide some training and some guidance to create a short 5-minute video that will be viewed by our membership to help them get to know you even better beyond your application. And then from there, our membership will move into the voting phase of our process. And then the grantees will be announced at our annual celebration, which is an in-person event on June 17th. And, we highly encourage the grantees to attend. And that would be on June 17th of 2026. So those would be the key dates for you to be mindful of. But most importantly, the opening of the application and the closing of the application on December 15th. And then finally, in terms of communication moving forward, and we have plenty of time today to respond to your questions that you have put into the chat, and we very much appreciate you doing that. But again, just, for your own purposes and where you will have easy access to information on our website, which you'll see the address for our website on this slide. You can again go to that and see an offline copy of the application. You'll have the opportunity to see some past grantees of Impact 100, but you'll have information that will be helpful for you, can be found on the website. And then if beyond that, if you find that you're not finding the information you need on the website, you have read through the FAQ, which, as we said, is very comprehensive. But if you find that you are not finding the information that you need, then this email, which is grants@impact100dc.org, will come right into the grants team that you're meeting today. And then one of us or another member of our team will follow up with you. Normally, if it is a new question and something that we have not been asked before, then we add it into the FAQ, so everyone else will have access to that as well. But you will receive a response from that grants email. So those would be two opportunities for you if you need additional information after today. But as we said at the start of the meeting, we want to again thank you very, very much for your time today. We want to thank you for your interest in Impact 100 DC's grant process. We look forward to meeting as many of you as we can. It's extraordinarily just gratifying and really just your work is we are full of admiration for the work that is going on in the communities, and we look forward to getting to know you. But we appreciate your time and the effort that it will take to participate in our grant process. So what we will do now is go to the chat and then take the questions one by one. And if, we will stay on. We were scheduled today to go until 5:30, so we'll stay on until, everyone's questions are answered. So, okay.
You want me to read the questions?
Yeah, so we'll read the questions, and then Latina, if, you obviously will take the questions, the financially related questions, and then we together as a team can respond to the others.
Okay, so the first question was, will the slides be available later? I believe Dorothy did answer that in the chat. Yes, slides will be available. I think we said tomorrow. We were going to try to get them out tomorrow. Okay. So the next question, what if our budget exceeded 5 million for the last few years, but due to government budget cuts is below 5 million now? As part of our eligibility, we do require that you're eligible during the 3 years of required reporting. So we would be looking for you to be below that 5 million threshold for each of the periods that you're providing in your application. Next question, Prince William County is part of the DMV, but is excluded, question mark. Kate, Dorothy, do you want to take that?
Yeah. So currently, Prince William County has not been part of our review geography. It's a great question, and we appreciate you joining us today for this, and we are happy to take that back and into consideration for for our next cycle, for the 2027 cycle, as we continue to grow as a group and assess the needs of the community.
Next question. We have 2 years of audits and tax records and can provide a financial report for year 3. The audit for third year may be available spring of 2026. Is that okay? So yes, potentially. What we would request is if you have 2 years of audits and you're getting an independent financial review for a third year, the finance committee review process happens in April. So if that third year would be available before the finance committee review process kicks off, then we would likely still be able to consider your application. So I would say in those instances, go ahead and complete the application. You will need to attach something to the grant form to because it is will be a required field for all 3 years. You can put a letter in there that says, our third year is in process, should be available before. And Dorothy, maybe you can double check the dates. I want to say April 15th is when we're going to be done. Can't remember exactly when we're kicking off. But we'd need to have it in hand by that time. So if you expect it will be done before then I would say go ahead and submit. We can make a note of that exception, and then we can reach out, and you can reach back out to us when it's complete, and then we would, consider it as part of the process. Next question. Do you have a history of funding national organizations for specific support for DC area local programs?
I'll take that. I think we will look at national organizations as long as you have a separate entity, and we will take a look at that and we will evaluate your application based on you being a separate entity of that larger organization.
Yeah, so one of our biggest challenges is that we have is identifying the financial information for local organizations that are part of a national, a broader national organization. So if your financial statements are prepared at that larger national parent level and you don't have independent or audited financial statements at the DC level, that would be very difficult for us to evaluate. And so certainly if you're in that camp, it may be worth reaching out to just clarify with us what is available before you go through the full application process, because we can certainly help preview or pre-scan what financial information is available to ensure that it will meet our qualifications to be able to complete the review. Next question. Our organization operates nationally with 25 campuses, all filing under a single EIN that reflects a consolidated budget. However, each campus is responsible for its own fundraising and manages an individual operating budget, which falls below the 5 million threshold. Given the structure, is our organization eligible to apply? Yes. Again, similarly to the response that I just provided, our biggest challenge in those instances is making sure that you do have the financial reporting criteria met at that individual level, but we would certainly accept your application with an operating budget. That's within our eligibility criteria. Next question. Do organizations have to have audited financial statements? No, we would accept either independently reviewed financial statements if audited financial statements are not available. And then what about not audited but independently financial reviewed? Yes, that would meet the criteria of independent financial review, so long as it's performed by a qualified CPA and does include the independent review report. Let's see, what do we got next? Okay. And then I think there was, oh, go ahead.
Asking, if we prefer a 12 or to 24-month use of the grant period. But, Bettina, you want to take that?
Oh, I can take it, sure. And we don't have a preference. We just ask that, our grant process is basically a 2-year grant. So we ask that whatever your funding request is, that the funds will be spent within those 2 years. If effectively you would expect to be able to, grant to disperse the funds within 12 months, then that would be acceptable as well. We do not, it's not a factor in how we evaluate the eligibility or the worthiness of the application.
Yeah, I would just add that we do not provide the full $100,000 in at one time. That would be spread over the 1 year in some way.
Yep.
Okay.
So then the next question is, I see you requested MOA for formal partnerships, but what is considered formal versus non-formal? Is it just part of the funding or would go to a partner or not? Dorothy, Kate, you want to take that or you want me to?
When we're looking at a memorandum of agreement, we're going to be looking at the funding. I think that's a big part of it. Where are you meeting the funding criteria that we have? And who's taking the lead on the proposal? I mean, who's actually doing the work? I think we're looking for the organization itself to be doing the work as opposed to the larger organization. Latina, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, maybe what I'll add is often what we see is that organizations that do not meet our eligibility requirements because their operating budget is less than 300,000, so they cannot qualify on their own. They may partner with another organization that has a larger operating budget to be able to qualify for the grant. In those instances, we would expect to see the terms of the arrangement included in the application through an MOA that's signed by both parties. And that should identify which organization will be the roles and responsibility of each organization. So generally, because we are then asking for financial statement information for the lead applicant, the larger organization that does meet our eligibility criteria would be considered the lead applicant, but in that MOA would spell out that perhaps the organization with the lower operating budget will actually run the program, will be responsible for execution of the activities subject to the funding request. And if there is a sharing agreement between the parties of the grant funds, that should be spelled out in the memorandum of agreement as well. So hopefully that fully addresses that question. But if that did not address the question, then feel free to expand the question in the chat. And so, yeah, let us know if more clarity is needed there. And then it says, if an organization has 1 year of the 3 past years with a budget over 300 and only one independently reviewed financials, must they partner with a larger organization? So yes, as I just described, that is one way in which we see partnerships and collaborations form is because one party will not meet the eligibility criteria on their own. And the next question is a really good question. How many grants will be, they're all good questions, but this is one that's a little bit tricky in terms of where we're at in the year. So how many grants will be awarded in 2026? It seems like there were several awards for 2025, including both impact grants and mission-based grants. Can you explain the difference? Kate or Dorothy, do you want to take that?
I'll start in case you can jump in. The impact grant is really based on our membership, and the more members we have, we're able to raise more funds so that we can provide the community with those impact grants. Our impact grant is for $100,000. So last year we were fortunate enough to have enough to offer 2 impact grants of $100,000 each. We were so excited. We finished our 5th year in the organization and we're growing and we hope that we can continue to do that. And then the funds that were left over after the $200,000 we then would offer mission-based grants. So I can't tell you how many we're going to have because we don't know at this point how many members we will have. But we're hoping that we can meet or exceed what we did last year. So our fingers
And
are
our,
crossed.
and our membership slash fundraising goes through 12/31. So we still have a couple more months to make our goal, which is just as many as we can. So certainly open to new members joining all the time so that we can increase
Right.
our grant size.
The one thing I just would add to that too is the reporting requirements are also different for the grantees. For, if you are awarded an impact grant, those large $100,000 grants, the reporting requirements are different than the smaller mission-based grants. And also, and this is an important note that we, really want to highlight is, if you apply for our grant and are not, awarded a grant, you can reapply and reapply. And we've had many organizations who do that. They, will apply and then, perhaps not be awarded a grant and then tweak the application and refine their application and, and then apply and then in follow-on years, had been awarded either a mission or an impact grant. If you are awarded a mission-based grant, you may reapply again for the impact grant. If you are awarded an impact grant, though, we do have a cooling off period for those winners that they cannot reapply for 5 years.
Yes. So the next question is, your website states most states have laws requiring charitable nonprofits to obtain an independent audit under certain circumstances. And this is usually triggered when you reach a specific amount of revenues in a fiscal year. If you're not already legally required to conduct an independent audit, we do not expect one from you. So the question is, if our revenues are greater than 300,000, but our charitable contributions are only 100,000 and we have not had a financial review because it was not required by state, may we apply? So while we do not require a financial audit, if you have not been legally required by the state to have one, we do require an independent financial review in the absence of an audit. So that would still be a requirement that we would have, and that would need to be for each of the 3-year period that you would submit with your application. And certainly if you have other fact patterns that you would like us to consider in advance, feel free to reach out and we can evaluate your specific facts and circumstances. And so we had another question confirming that there will only be one winner of the grant. I think Dorothy covered that, each year based on the funds available, we will identify the number of impact grants as well as the number of mission-based grants that we were able to award. What are the compliance requirements if awarded the grant? Kate or Dorothy, do you want to take that?
Well, I can just say that the funds need to be used within a 2-year period. There is some reporting requirements, and that you would be working with our grant liaisons, our nonprofit liaisons. So we do ask for reporting. We don't ask for the mission-based detailed reporting, but we do. Members want to know how those funds were spent, what was the success of it. And so the person who gets the impact grant will work with our grant liaison and provide us reports in terms of the spending of the funds. And we do understand that sometimes, you have an ideal that you want to do certain things with funds, but the economy or something happens, you lost the funding, and the funds you get are going to be used to keep the organization running. And so we just need to know how those funds were spent so we can go back and report to our membership that the funds were used to support the community just as, our requirements are.
Yeah, there is a formal agreement that lays out those key requirements that we would asked the impact grant recipients to commit to, and then the mission-based grants would not have to go through that similar process. Next question. It looks like if what we're applying for is part of a larger improvement project, for example, a building improvement, and this is for a programmatic element of that effort, does that create a challenge? So this is a little bit of a tough response. So certainly we'll have to evaluate the facts and circumstances of the funding request based on what you provide. We would not have a restriction on you applying for the grant and using a portion of the grant to meet a larger improvement project. We would want to understand, part of the challenge with a large project is, where you are in the process, what other funds perhaps are committed to the process, in order to ensure that, if we were to award the $100,000 to your application, that larger improvement project has the means to move forward and doesn't end up being stalled. So there is certainly information that we would be looking for you to provide in your application to provide some clarity as to how the funding request that you're asking of Impact would play into the larger needs of the organization to meet that project, to meet that larger improvement project. But it would not be an issue or eliminating your eligibility in any way. We would just certainly hope that you use the application to be very clear as to the probability that the project is going to be completed based on the sources and resources that you currently have and those that you're maybe anticipating from Impact and other grants that would be at your disposal. Okay, the next question we have, we operate in under-resourced communities in both Fairfax and Loudoun County. Can we still apply? Our finance director is very experienced in handling county restricted funding. So yes, Fairfax County is a county that's included within our eligibility.
Yes, I think both are, yeah.
Yep. To clarify my 12 to 24 months question, I meant to ask if it matters of when the 12 to 24 months start. Okay. Does the time frame need to start in June 2026 when the awards are granted, or can it start before or after that if programs are already happening? So I think that's a good question. What we expect is that within 24 months of the grant essentially being awarded, the funds will be expended. If there is, a few months of trickle, I'm sure that would not be a problem. But if you're going to get the funds and you're not going to start for 36 months, that would be a project that would be a funding request that likely would not move forward, because we are really hoping to see the funds get immediately put to work in the community. And so we just want to understand that within that time frame, those funds are going to start making their way into the community. My organization fiscal year runs from July 1 to June 30. Since grantees are announced in June, should our proposal address programming for the current fiscal year or next fiscal year? Dorothy or Kate, I'll flip this one over to you. I'm happy to provide some perspective after.
Yeah, I personally think, since we're talking about a June, July timeframe and you've got 2 years to use the funds, I think it would make sense whatever you thought was the best way of doing it. It would depend, I guess, on your funding, whether or not you're meeting our criteria between that 300,000 and 5 million. That would be what I would be most concerned, that you fell into the right requirements for the size of your organization. Latina, Kate?
Yeah, I was going to say exactly that. I mean, our goal is to understand how those funds are going to be put to work. If your expectations on your next fiscal year are very consistent with the current year, then maybe there's not a significant difference. But if you are, anticipating that the organization will be doing something very differently, or the funds would be used differently, in the, current year versus the upcoming year, I would expect that you would maybe align your response with the upcoming year, when you actually will have the funds that will be put into work. In some cases, we do see that part of the funding request is actually reimbursement for ongoing activities. And so if that is your plan, that could certainly be how you articulate your expected use of the funds, right? So not necessarily limited one way or another, but I would just encourage you to think about what your plan is for those funds and how that will be put into use, and the timing should more or less correlate to when those funds would be received and able to be put to use.
Okay.
Oh, I do see a couple more questions. If
Yeah.
a small org partners with a large org as the lead, do you want to see a full application from both with 3 years? No. Okay.
Mm.
So we would ask that the lead organization, which would be the organization that has the financial information, to apply and to indicate the partnership. So we do have a question that will ask, is this part of a partnership? If you answer yes to that, another set of questions will pop up, which will then require you to identify the organization as well as to attach the MOA. If you answer no to that, you won't see any of those questions. So it would only be applicable to those organizations who do have a partnership, in which case you only need to submit one application as a joint application. I have to leave, so I won't be here when you get to this question. Okay, well, hopefully I know that this is being recorded and will be made available, so hopefully you can come back and listen to
I
it.
think we're at the end of the questions.
Where will the slides be available? Will there be an email or message going out with this information? So Dorothy, Kate, I think
Yeah.
it's via email.
They'll go out to the email that registered for this session. So they will be emailed out to that email. And that would be probably my final parting piece of advice in this call for everyone who is still with us is on your application and with what you use to register, please be sure to use the email that that we'll be communicating with. We'll be back and forth, with updates or information. So just, be mindful of that what email you choose, whether it's registering for this kind of an event or on your application, that so that we can make sure that you are getting timely updates. But the slides will go out, and I believe they will be posted to the website as well.
Yes, that is a great point, Kate. The contact information in the application will be used to communicate with you going forward. So do make sure that that is an email address and a phone number that is monitored and actively reviewed, because that will be the way that we will communicate with you. And then certainly if you reach out to us through the grants at impact100dc.org email address, we will respond to whatever emails are being reached out to us. But if that is different than the email that is in your application contact, we may not connect those dots. And so just being mindful that if there's a subsequent change, perhaps because somebody who was identified as the point of contact either for the finance committee or for the executive director changes during the application period prior to us awarding the grant, it may be worth just reaching out to let us know that there's been a change so we can make note of that. Otherwise, if we do have questions, it may be going to an email address that's no longer available and in service. And that would be difficult for us to make sure that we're reaching you.
Latina, there's one more question that I think you might be able to answer.
Okay. Um, if time allows, this question is specific to my organization. We're a national nonprofit with local programs that each have their own program budgets, but not a separate entity. When applying for funding, we'd be seeking support for a DC-based local program. However, audit financial statements for the national organization, not the local program specifically. Would this disqualify us from consideration? Is it still possible to apply under the circumstances? So I did touch on this. If your fact pattern is such that you do, so often what we'll see is we'll see financial statements for, the parent or the larger organization, and then in the back, we may see supplementary financial information, and that information may be at the local level. That's ideally what we would be looking for, because that information would generally be covered by the independent auditor or independent reviewers report on the faithfulness of the financial statements, and would naturally then be covered by any applicable footnotes. So if that level of information is not available within the financial statement package that has been reviewed or audited, then that does create challenges for us to get comfortable with eligibility. Certainly happy to, if you want to, kind of provide an example, we can chat through it. But that's what we have found in the past. That makes it very easy for us to get comfortable of the financial information at the local level, is that information is included as supplementary to the audited or reviewed financial statements. And I know sometimes in those cases, maybe not all of the full financials are available. Maybe there's a balance sheet and a P&L and maybe cash flow, but not functional expenses, or one or the other. We can certainly, kind of talk about that if that's your fact pattern. But certainly we would look to see something that is that we can attribute to the local chapter that has gone through that level of rigor review. Another question just came in. The audit includes security deposit furniture and puts us over 5 million, but the revenues are below 5 million. Are we eligible? I'm not sure what we mean by the audit includes, if that's, just an asset, or if there's something else there. So generally, we're looking at revenue or operating budget. Could also, depending on the organization, be the the grants or other sources of income, in terms of determining the 300 to 5 million. So if your revenues are below 5 million, meaning your overall operating budget, the resources that are available to the organization to carry out the activities of the organization are under that 5 million, that we would generally consider that to be eligible. And then, yes, assets, grants are below 5 million. So yeah, we would look at, we're primarily looking at that grant slash revenue, with income sources. The other question that we sometimes get in terms of eligibility is we'll have organizations that have significant in-kind contributions that would technically contribute to your revenue item from a taxable perspective, but it's a complete pass-through. So, for example, we see like food banks that get significant contributions towards year end, and then those are immediately put back into the community. So we see the in and the out, and the net effect of that is zero. We would typically not consider that to count towards your $5 million, since those are, kind of in-kind services that are netted and directly put back into the organization. And they're typically variable year to year. So if you have, a circumstance like that, and you want additional clarity on that, we can certainly talk about those specific fact patterns. But generally speaking, we're looking at, that operating revenue budget revenue grant amounts, kind of those income items in order to evaluate the eligibility.
All
It
right.
looks like we've answered all the questions, and it's been great to host this program for you all, and we look forward to getting your applications. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for your time with our application. Thank you for your incredibly good work. And we hope to meet as many of you as possible. So
Thank you.
have a good rest of your day.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.